Hey everybody, it's Peter Green from Agile for All, coming to you with your daily dose of Agile. Today is Friday, and on Fridays we talk about the humanizing work movement. And this Friday we're going to do a special version of the humanizing work daily dose, where I'm going to drop in a video here that I created last night of an animation kind of illustrating the history of the research on motivation. So it's going to talk about all the different sources of research that I've uncovered and try to put those into a cohesive whole on a timeline. So hopefully you enjoy this format. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a book written in 1960 by a professor at the MIT Sloan School named Douglas McGregor. And McGregor posited that there are really two theories about what motivate people at work. Theory X, which he said was the predominant theory in most companies in the 1950s and 60s. Theory X posited that in order for people to be motivated at work, they essentially had to have some extrinsic motivators, carrots, sticks, punishments, and rewards in order to do good work, to work hard, to be engaged at work. He said that's not the only theory, though. There's also Theory Y, and Theory Y is that motivation at work is as natural for humans as sleep, eat, and play. And so it's the job of management to tap into that intrinsic motivation and figure out how to take advantage of that and unlock that in people. So two theories posited. This really started in the workplace, a trend towards trying to dig into what does motivate people. Now, as we move on, in the year 2000, Richard Ryan and Edward Dacey posited this theory called self-determination theory. This was a scientific theory. In other words, they had done research now, several research efforts to try and dig into this. And what they found is that there were really three factors that lead to positive motivation. And the way they describe those are competence, which is the need to be effective in dealing with our environment. We want to feel like we're good at things. Autonomy, the need to feel like we have some control over things. And relatedness, we want to be able to interact with and connect with others. And so then in the 2000s, we start to see more and more being written about motivation. One of the more popular books on this topic, written by Dan Pink, really nicely written book called Drive. He's got a really good TED Talk that he's given on this book as well. And he was summarizing, like a lot of authors do, summarizing some of the scholarly research, like what Dacey and Ryan were doing. And he summarizes the three factors across a breadth of research in different fields as autonomy, so similar to what Dacey and Ryan were talking about. He described mastery, the desire to improve at things, very similar to competence from Dacey and Ryan. But then he added, and this was tapping into a lot of the work by Adam Grant and others, that purpose was really the third factor. The desire to make a difference in the world was an important thing. So those were the three things that Pink described in his book, Drive. All right, so we move on now to 2011, Teresa Amabile, Stephen Kramer, Amabile, a researcher at Harvard, studying a whole bunch of project teams at a whole bunch of different companies. And what she would do is give them a morning email and an evening email to all the participants in this study. The morning email just asked them to rate their level of motivation as they come into work. And the evening email asked the same question, what's your level of motivation as you leave work? And then would ask a second question, which was, tell us one thing that happened today that seemed important. And so they called that the journal question because people would journal about what went on that day. And then they had just reams and reams of data because they did this at dozens of different teams, a pretty big study over many weeks. And so they could try and look for correlations between things happening at work that people reported and whether motivation was up, down, or the same. And what they found is by far the strongest correlation they found is, did I get something done today that made a difference for somebody? And so they had examples of people in companies that had been acquired, and the people on the project team in the middle of this study found out they're all getting replaced, and their job now is to prepare the technology for the people that are going to take over their jobs. Those people on that team, as hard as that would be, still reported that their motivation was high when they got something done that mattered. So that's the progress principle. Really interesting addition to the research there. Now, in 2013, we have this great book by Matthew Lieberman called Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And Lieberman digs into the neurological research, studying brainwave patterns, and found that the primary function of our brain when it's not actively engaged in trying to figure something out. Our brain then goes back to looking for connection. Like that is the steady state of the human brain, is looking for connection. And the way he put that is that the research shows that our need to connect is more fundamental, more basic than our need for food or shelter. So that's really reinforcing the work done by Dacey and Ryan on this idea of relatedness. And then we're going to fast forward to 2015, a book by Neil Doshi and Lindsay McGregor called Primed to Perform. And they did a really nice job of summarizing the research, not only on the positive side, right? They tapped into some of the similar things here where they've got purpose, which was the same as, remember what Dan Pink was talking about. Potential is how they described competence or mastery. They described autonomy as play, the desire to have freedom and be creative in how we solve problems. So they put a nice 3 Ps on the positive things here: purpose, potential, and play. They didn't talk much about social connection or relatedness, but then they also did a great job of summarizing the negative factors. So emotional pressure will decrease motivation at work, economic pressure doing the same thing, and the worst of the 3 is inertia, the sense that nothing ever changes around here. So this was a great book to kind of summarize it in a pretty digestible way. So there's all these different factors at play here, right? Let's see if I can zoom this out. There we go. The analogy that comes to mind, and some of you may have heard this, is if you were to put blindfolds on 5 people and then lead them into a room that had an elephant, I think you'd have to put nose plugs in, otherwise they'd be able to smell and hear the elephant. But at any rate, the old fable is that if you then ask them to describe what they feel, and the person who grabs onto the tail says, I think it's a rope. I feel a rope. And the person that grabs maybe this leg here is saying, no, it's a tree trunk. And then somebody else in the front says, no, it's a big scaly snake. And maybe another person grabs the tusk here and says, no, it's like a bone. And somebody grabs the ear and says, no, it's floppy like a pancake. And everybody's describing what they think the thing is, and what they don't realize is they're just all describing different aspects of the same whole. So if we think of the research around motivation as that, right, there are lots of factors at play here, positive factors, negative factors. If we were to summarize the lanes for positive factors, it's daily small wins, it's feeling a sense of purpose at work, it's feeling like I have some competence, some growth, some mastery and potential, it's feeling like I have autonomy and creativity, and then connection is clearly really important. Those are the 5 things that lead to motivation at work and at home. And then the negative factors: emotional pressure, economic pressure. Interestingly, positive and negative here. Both positive economic pressure and negative economic pressure have a correlation with lower motivation. And then finally, inertia. These factors all make up this whole of the complex thing that is motivation. Now, of course, that's going to change on a day-to-day basis. It's not going to be a steady state. Everybody's going to have a different kind of affinity for each of these things. But that's what the research shows so far. All right, thanks for watching. Hopefully that was a helpful format for you. If you liked that format of video, let us know. We'll see if we can incorporate more of those in the future. Go ahead and share this with friends if you think they might find it interesting, and we would love it if you would subscribe to our channel. Thanks, everyone, and have a great weekend.